Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing the if you like this book, then I think you will like this book. So I've always liked this video idea and I think it's a great way to get recommendations because if you've read one, then you might like the other, even if I'm recommending a less popular one. Does that make, you get two recommendations in one. So to start us off, I thought I would talk about if you liked The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, then I think you will like Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. So, The City of Brass follows our main character Nari, and it's set in like a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy world. So it's got real world 1800s Egypt and then like a fantasy city as well called Daevabad, and you're following Nari, who she's a human, she's brought up in the human world, and then one day she accidentally calls a jinn to her and he takes her to the city of Daevabad, where it turns out that she actually is from a lost family who have healing powers. And for me this story is so it's just magical. And it is so interesting having the Middle Eastern culture and these influences brought out in this story, that it was very fantasy based, but it was a fantasy that was not based on like a Western society. It was based on like the Arabian Nights and the Middle East and all of those influences instead of like the traditional Western fantasies. And so that's why I'd recommend Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri, which is inspired by medieval India. And in this one you're following our main character Mare, who is trapped between like two cultures. So in this world there's like the cities, and father's from the ruling class and her mother is from like the nomadic people that worshipped the spirit gods of the sand. And so one night she is caught performing these forbidden rituals that her mother's family have taught her, and this brings the attention of the emperor, and they force her into service to the emperor and an arranged marriage. And so the reason I think that these two complement each other is because of the Middle Eastern and Indian in this one influence on the fantasy world, that I think they give like a slightly different feel to fantasy. And as well, the main characters in both of these are quite spunky. They both are fighting for themselves and their own identity, and so I think there are quite a few similarities between them. So yes, there is also hints of romance in both of these books, more so in Empire of Sand, but I think that fantasy with a little bit of romance is also a similarity between these two. Next, I thought that if you loved, like me, and read this very recently, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, then you might want something similar to it. And so I would recommend Gods of Jadens Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So if you didn't know already, I am obsessed with Addie LaRue. I absolutely loved this book, and it follows a girl who makes a deal with the devil in 1700s France, and she's stuck in an arranged marriage, and she wants to be able to make her own choices and have her own identity. And so the deal is that she will live forever, but the consequence of that is that nobody will remember her, and she can't make any impact upon the world. And I absolutely love this. So I didn't love Gods of Jadens Shadow quite as much, but it does explore some similar themes. In this book, you are following Cassiopeia, and this is set in Mexico during it says the Jazz Age, so I guess the 1900s. Cassiopeia is brought up, and she's the unwanted child. She's brought up in her grandfather's house, and I think her father was not really accepted. And after her father died, her mother returned to her family home where her grandfather doesn't really accept her. And then one day she discovers a chest in her grandfather's room which holds an ancient Mayan god of death. She finds in the chest in her grandfather's study, and so she opens it and unwittingly makes a deal with this Mayan god of death. So that's where the similarity falls in with the Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, because yet again a deal has been made between not necessarily a naive girl, but between a young girl and the devil. And for Cassiopeia, the deal is that she will help him regain his body and regain his power against his brother, and in return he will give her whatever she desires. And so it just follows Cassiopeia like just experiencing life and coming to terms with who she is and what she wants out of life, and being able to explore outside of her provincial family home and just being able to live. And I think that also relates with this, that they both follow young girls that are just wanting to get out of the situations that they are in and experience life the way that they want to and be able to make their own choices. So for me, I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, but the writing style, I really enjoyed the plot, but for some reason I didn't connect with it completely, so that's why I only gave it 4 stars and not 5 stars. But I think if you liked this, then you would also like this. If you like Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, then I think you would also like Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. So I think this one predates Throne of Glass, but now Throne of Glass is just so big and Sarah J. Maas is so popular that this one has, I guess, and as it's older, it's still sort of been not forgotten about, but like less, it's been mentioned a lot less. So Throne of Glass follows an assassin called Selena Sardothian, and at the beginning of the book she is imprisoned and she is offered a deal to become the king's assassin, and so she goes through some trials to become the king's assassin, and then the plot really expands from there. And Poison Study is also following a young woman called Yelena, very similar names, and she, at the beginning of the book, she's in prison for murder and the punishment is death, but she has been offered the opportunity to become the king's taste tester. So there's that similarity in that although she's not being the king's assassin, she's being the king's taste tester. And it's viewed that if you're a taste tester, you're ultimately going to be killed because the king is going to be poisoned. And similarly to Throne of Glass, this is where this book starts, but then it greatly expands from there. I've only read the first 3 books. This is like a 9-book series, but you can read them all in chunks. So the first 3 are the first arc, and then you have 4 to 6, which is another arc, and then 7 to 9 as another arc. And I would like to continue and finish the series. I know that Vish over at Books with V absolutely loves the whole lot, so I would really like to continue with it. And then the final pairing that I have is that if you liked The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, then I think you would like The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. So The Starless Sea follows our main character Zachary, and at the beginning of the book he discovers a book in the library that is full of different short stories, and then he comes across one which is the story of a moment from his childhood. And in his childhood he saw a door on the wall, and he didn't enter it. He decided not to enter through that door, and he has come to regret this decision ever since, and he's always thinking about what if I went through that door, if I came across that door ever again, because the next day the door is gone, I would go through it. And then you're following Zachary as he's trying to piece this all together as an adult and try and go through the doors. And there are doors in this world into other worlds. And this is where the 10,000 Doors of January comes in, because this also follows like a portal fantasy where you're following our main character January, and she lives in our world, but our world is filled with doors to other worlds, and like all the worlds are different. It's just like each door could lead you somewhere completely different and completely magical. And you're following her as a child all the way through to her adulthood, and gradually the doors are closing, and you want to know why, like who is closing the doors and what is going wrong with the doors. And she discovers one as a child, and she's always just trying to get back to it and discover what's through these doors. And so that's why I think these two books really match up well together, because they're both following these doors or portals into other worlds and these magical worlds that we would all want to explore. And so yes, I think if you like one, then you would also like the other. And additionally, I feel like the writing style has some similarities between it, like they're both a bit more whimsical in the way that they're written. I'd say this one is slightly more plot heavy than this one, but otherwise they're both just like quite magical, whimsical stories. So those are all the books that I would like to recommend. If you liked one, then I think you will like the other. I hope you liked this idea, and if you want me to do it again sometime, then I'll try and think up some more of If You Like This, then I think you will like that. Let me know if you think my recommendations match up, or if you would recommend other books for the books that I've talked about. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!